If this message reaches anyone, please don't ignore it. At 9:42 p.m. Emma Carter stared at the cracked screen of her aging phone, with tears blurring the words she could barely type. Her left arm throbbed beneath a makeshift sling she had tied with a faded gray scarf, and every movement sent a dull ache through her shoulder. The tiny apartment around her felt impossibly quiet, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Rain tapped against the window, overlooking a narrow street in downtown Portland, Oregon, where headlights reflected across wet pavement like rivers of broken glass. Emma had always believed tomorrow would be better. She worked double shifts at a neighborhood diner, skipped meals whenever rent came due, smiled at strangers even when her own heart felt exhausted, and told herself that kindness still mattered. Tonight, for the first time in years, hope felt dangerously small. Her trembling fingers opened an old text conversation. She didn't even look at the number. She simply typed the only sentence she could think of. "He broke my arm." Then she pressed send. The message disappeared into the darkness of the digital world before she realized something was wrong. This wasn't the contact she meant to reach. The number on the screen ended with unfamiliar digits she had never seen before. Panic rushed through her chest. She tried to unsend it, but the option was gone. "Great," she whispered to herself with a tired laugh that sounded more like surrender than humor. "Now I'm bothering some stranger." She placed the phone beside her and closed her eyes for only a moment, wondering how a single day could unravel so completely. Across the country, nearly 3,000 miles away beneath Manhattan, hidden behind layers of polished steel and ancient stone that no city blueprint had ever recorded, a phone vibrated once upon a black marble table. Every conversation inside the chamber stopped instantly. 12 figures dressed in tailored black suits turned toward the single device as though it had broken an unbreakable law. At the head of the table sat Lucien Blackwood. To the financial world, he was an elusive billionaire whose companies quietly shaped global markets. To the immortal world, he was something far older. The Vampire King. He glanced at the glowing screen. The room grew noticeably colder. One simple sentence stared back at him. "He broke my arm." No greeting. No explanation. Just pain distilled into 5 words. The council expected him to dismiss it. Instead, Lucien slowly stood. His silver-gray eyes narrowed with a focus that silenced every whisper in the chamber. "Your Majesty," one council member began cautiously, "the treaty meeting has not concluded." Lucien ignored him. His thumb moved once across the screen. Somewhere in Portland, Emma's phone vibrated on the worn wooden table beside her couch. She frowned, expecting spam or another bill reminder. Instead, she saw a reply from the unknown number she had accidentally texted. 3 words. Calm. Certain. Impossible to misunderstand. "I'm on my way." Emma stared at the glowing words as though they belonged to someone else. "I am on my way." No question. No confusion. No request for her address. Whoever had answered sounded frighteningly certain, and somehow that certainty unsettled her more than silence would have. She swallowed hard and typed back with one trembling hand. "I think you have the wrong person." 3 gray dots appeared almost instantly, then vanished. Seconds later, another message arrived. "Stay where you are. Lock the door. Do not answer it for anyone except me." Emma frowned. The stranger sounded less like a concerned passerby and more like someone accustomed to giving orders that were never questioned. She almost laughed. Who talks like that? She placed the phone on the coffee table and slowly walked toward the apartment door, checking the old deadbolt twice before pulling the curtains closed. Outside, the rain intensified, washing the narrow street in silver reflections. A city bus rolled past, spraying water across the curb, while distant sirens echoed somewhere beyond the skyline. Everything appeared perfectly ordinary, yet the tiny apartment suddenly felt different, as though invisible eyes had begun watching from somewhere beyond the storm. Nearly 3,000 miles away, a black sedan emerged from a private elevator beneath one of Manhattan's tallest towers. It was followed by 3 identical vehicles moving with impossible precision through an underground tunnel that did not exist on any public map. Lucien Blackwood stood beside the first car instead of entering it immediately. Around him, members of the Royal Guard waited silently, their tailored black coats untouched by the cold air swirling through the chamber. One of them stepped forward and bowed his head. "Your Majesty, the Council demands your return." The treaty vote cannot proceed without you. Lucien never looked back. His silver eyes remained fixed upon the illuminated map projected above the hood of the car. A single blue signal pulsed over Portland, Oregon. How long? He asked quietly. Commercial flight, approximately 5 hours. Unacceptable. The guard hesitated before answering. The Royal aircraft is prepared. 2 hours and 43 minutes. Lucien shook his head once. Still too slow. The chamber fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The king had another way to travel, one almost never used because every journey carried an ancient cost. Meanwhile, Emma tried convincing herself that she had imagined the entire exchange. She picked up her phone again, intending to apologize for the accidental text, but another notification appeared before she could type. Are the lights still on in your apartment? Emma froze. Her eyes lifted toward the ceiling lamp glowing softly above her kitchen table. How could he know she had not turned it off? Her pulse quickened. She typed carefully. Who are you? The answer came almost immediately. Someone who needs you to trust me for 1 hour. She stared at those words until another sound interrupted her thoughts. Footsteps echoed somewhere beyond the hallway outside her apartment. Slow, measured, then silence. Emma held her breath. The building was old, and neighbors often came and went, but something about those footsteps felt deliberate, as though someone had stopped directly outside her door. Her phone vibrated once more. This time the message was only 4 words long. Step away from the door. Emma instinctively obeyed without understanding why. Barely 2 seconds later, someone knocked softly on the other side. 3 slow taps. Then nothing. Emma stood perfectly still, every instinct telling her not to breathe. 3 gentle knocks lingered in the silence beyond the apartment door before fading into the steady rhythm of rain striking the windows. Her phone vibrated again. Do not answer. She stepped backward until her legs touched the edge of the worn couch. Whoever had sent those messages somehow knew exactly what was happening outside her apartment. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it gave her the smallest feeling that she was no longer completely alone. Another knock came, this time a little louder, followed by a familiar voice from the hallway. Emma? It is me. I just want to talk. Her heart tightened. She recognized the voice immediately. It carried none of the anger she had heard earlier that evening. It sounded calm, almost apologetic, which somehow made it even harder to trust. She looked toward the peephole but stopped herself before taking another step. Her phone lit up once more. Do not look through the door. Stay away from the windows. Emma frowned. Whoever this stranger was, he seemed to anticipate every decision before she made it. She whispered, How could you possibly know? There was no answer. Instead, another message appeared. I can see the building. Relief and confusion collided inside her chest. She hurried into the kitchen, where the narrow window overlooked the parking lot below. Remembering the warning, she stayed well back from the glass and carefully shifted the curtain only an inch. At first she saw nothing except rain, empty parking spaces, and the glow of old streetlights reflecting across wet asphalt. Then 4 black vehicles rolled silently into the lot without headlights. They stopped with perfect precision, forming a protective line between the apartment entrance and the street. Men in dark overcoats stepped out together. Their movements were calm, disciplined, almost impossibly synchronized. None of them spoke. None of them looked hurried despite the storm. Every one of them faced the apartment building as though waiting for a single command. Emma had never seen anything like it. Down below, one final vehicle arrived several seconds later. Unlike the others, it did not stop immediately. It came to rest directly beneath the only functioning street lamp in the lot. The driver's door opened. A tall man stepped into the rain wearing a black overcoat that remained strangely untouched by the wind. Even from 6 stories above, there was something impossible about his presence. People crossing the sidewalk slowed without realizing why. Conversations ended. The air itself seemed quieter around him. He lifted his eyes toward Emma's building with calm certainty, as though he already knew the exact apartment she occupied. Her phone vibrated one last time. I have arrived. Stay where you are. Emma stared from the screen to the man below. Her breathing became shallow. She had never met him before, yet an unexplainable certainty settled over her heart. The stranger who had answered one desperate message had crossed half a continent without asking her name, without demanding an explanation, and without hesitating for a single moment. As she watched, Every man in the parking lot lowered his head slightly toward the newcomer, not with ordinary respect, but with the unmistakable reverence reserved for a king. The hallway remained silent for several long seconds. Then the soft voice outside Emma's apartment disappeared, followed by the sound of footsteps retreating toward the stairwell. She released a breath she had not realized she had been holding, but the feeling of relief lasted only a moment. Down in the parking lot, Lucien Blackwood never took his eyes off the sixth-floor window where he knew she was standing safely behind the curtain. One of his guards approached quietly. "Your Majesty, the human has left the building through the rear exit." Lucien gave a single nod. "Do not pursue him unless he returns. Tonight our only priority is Miss Carter." The guard lowered his head without question and disappeared into the ring. Hundreds of years had taught Lucien that fear often made people unpredictable, but kindness deserved protection before judgment. He stepped toward the apartment entrance. Residents walking through the lobby instinctively moved aside without understanding why. An elderly woman carrying groceries smiled politely at him, then paused halfway across the floor, suddenly unable to explain the overwhelming feeling that she had just passed someone extraordinary. Upstairs, Emma watched another message appear. "I am coming upstairs alone. Please do not be frightened." She hesitated before unlocking the deadbolt. Every lesson she had ever learned told her never to open the door to a stranger, yet everything about the evening had already escaped ordinary logic. Barely 30 seconds later, a gentle knock echoed through the apartment. Only once. No urgency. No impatience. Emma slowly approached the entrance. "Who are you?" she asked through the door. A calm voice answered from the hallway. "My name is Lucien Blackwood." She frowned. The name sounded strangely familiar, as though she had seen it somewhere before. "How did you find me?" A brief silence followed. "Because you asked for help." The simplicity of the answer caught her off guard. She unlocked the door, but kept the security chain fastened. The opening was only a few inches wide. Through it she saw a man standing perfectly still beneath the dim hallway light. He appeared to be in his early 30s, although something about his posture carried the quiet confidence of someone far older. Dark hair framed a composed face, and pale gray eyes reflected the hallway light with an unusual brightness that reminded her of moonlight on fresh snow. Rain still clung to the shoulders of his black overcoat, yet somehow the fabric looked untouched by the storm. He was remarkably handsome, but it was not his appearance that captured Emma's attention. It was the calm expression in his eyes. There was no pity, no curiosity, only absolute certainty that she would be safe. Lucien noticed the improvised sling supporting her injured arm. His expression did not change, but the hallway seemed noticeably colder. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. Emma hesitated. Every instinct warned her that this man was unlike anyone she had ever met. Before she could answer, one of the hallway lights flickered unexpectedly. Lucien's attention shifted toward the far end of the corridor. His eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Somewhere beyond the stairwell, another presence had entered the building. It was silent enough that no ordinary person could have noticed it, but Lucien had already recognized the scent. Someone else was searching for Emma Carter, and they had arrived only moments after he did. Emma slowly removed the security chain and opened the door just enough for Lucien to step inside. The apartment suddenly felt smaller, yet strangely safer, as though the storm outside had stopped at the threshold. Lucien glanced around the modest room without judgment. A worn sofa, a tiny dining table, stacks of library books, and a coffee mug with a chipped handle told him more about Emma than any background report ever could. She had very little, yet everything she owned was carefully maintained. His attention returned to her injured arm. "You should have that examined by a physician," he said gently. Emma gave a tired smile. "I will, when I can afford it." The answer lingered in the room longer than either of them expected. Lucien had spent centuries surrounded by unimaginable wealth, but those simple words carried a weight no fortune could erase. Before he could respond, one of the discreet communication devices beneath his sleeve vibrated. His captain spoke quietly through the secure channel. "Your Majesty, we have secured every entrance. However, another group entered the neighborhood 10 minutes ago. They are not ours." Lucien remained perfectly calm. "How many?" "At least 6. Maintain observation. Do not engage unless Miss Carter is threatened." Emma noticed the faint change in his expression. "Is something wrong?" she asked. Lucien met her eyes. "Someone else is looking for you." She stared at him in disbelief. That does not make any sense. I am just a waitress. Sometimes, Lucien replied quietly. The people who believe they are ordinary are the ones others search for the most. Before Emma could ask what he meant, her phone buzzed on the table. The screen displayed an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Instead of a voice, a single text message appeared. Do not trust the man inside your apartment. Emma looked from the message to Lucien. He had not seen the screen, yet somehow he already knew something had changed. Another message? He asked calmly. She nodded. It says I should not trust you. Lucien remained silent for several seconds. Then, without taking a single step toward her, he reached into the inside pocket of his overcoat and carefully placed a slim black wallet on the kitchen table before backing away. Inside is my identification, he said. Do not believe my words. Verify them yourself. Emma cautiously opened the wallet. Inside was a passport bearing the name Lucien Blackwood, a corporate identification card from Blackwood International Holdings, and several official credentials that looked authentic in every detail. She recognized the company immediately. News channels often described Blackwood International as one of the largest private investment firms in the world. She slowly looked back at the man standing quietly across from her modest kitchen. You own that company? Lucien answered with a slight nod. Among other responsibilities. Before Emma could process the impossible conversation, every light in the apartment flickered once, then went completely dark. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but from somewhere in the hallway came the unmistakable sound of an elevator door opening on the 6th floor. Lucien's gaze shifted toward the entrance. His voice remained calm, but every word carried unmistakable authority. Emma, whatever happens next, stay behind me. Emma instinctively stepped behind Lucien as the apartment settled into darkness. Only the soft glow from the rain-soaked windows outlined the room. Somewhere beyond the front door, measured footsteps crossed the hallway and then stopped. No voices followed. No impatient knocking. Only silence. Lucien remained perfectly still, listening with a level of focus that no ordinary person could possess. Every sound inside the aging building unfolded before him like pages of an open book. The elevator cables hummed. Water dripped through an old pipe 3 floors below. A child laughed in a neighboring apartment. Then he heard something else. 6 synchronized heartbeats moving with deliberate precision. They were not frightened residents. They had come with purpose. Lucien spoke without turning around. Emma, do you own another phone? No. Has anyone ever asked for your telephone number in an unusual way? She searched her memory. Not that I can remember. Before she could say more, electricity returned with a brief flicker, bathing the apartment in warm yellow light. Emma blinked as though waking from a dream. Lucien's attention shifted immediately toward the phone resting on the kitchen table. Its screen illuminated by itself. No notification appeared. Instead, the display changed into a pattern of unfamiliar silver symbols slowly rotating across the glass. Emma stared in confusion. What is that? Lucien walked closer, but stopped without touching the device. For the first time since entering the apartment, genuine surprise crossed his otherwise composed expression. That should not be possible, he said quietly. What should not be possible? Those symbols no longer exist. Emma looked from the glowing screen back to him. I do not understand. Lucien answered carefully. Neither do I. The symbols faded as suddenly as they had appeared, replaced by the ordinary lock screen showing the time. 9:58 in the evening. It looked completely normal again. Yet Lucien knew exactly what he had seen. The ancient royal script had disappeared centuries before the modern world existed. Only a handful of living beings could still recognize it. His communication device vibrated once beneath his sleeve. Your Majesty, his captain reported. We have intercepted unusual encrypted transmissions surrounding this building. They originated only after Miss Carter sent her text message. Lucien lowered his voice. Can you trace them? No. Whoever is transmitting already anticipated our systems. Emma watched him carefully. You keep calling me Miss Carter, but you speak as if you have known me for years. Lucien met her eyes with calm honesty. Until tonight, I had never heard your name. Then why are you risking so much for me? He glanced toward the rain-covered window before answering. Because someone wanted your message to disappear. Emma frowned. But it did not. No. Lucien replied. It reached the one number in the world that could never ignore it. Before Emma could ask another question, her phone vibrated sharply against the wooden table. This time there was no unknown number. There was no text at all. Instead, the screen displayed a contact that neither of them had saved. The name appeared one letter at a time until the entire room fell silent. Royal Emergency Line. Emma looked at Lucien in disbelief. I have never seen that before. Lucien did not answer immediately. His pale eyes remained fixed on the impossible words glowing across the screen. After several long seconds, he spoke so quietly that it almost sounded like a memory. Neither has anyone else for more than 400 years. Emma could not take her eyes off the glowing words on her phone. Royal Emergency Line. The letters looked ordinary, yet something about them filled the room with a silence that felt older than memory itself. She looked toward Lucien, hoping he would explain what was happening, but even he seemed momentarily unsettled. For someone who had remained calm through every impossible event that evening, his hesitation spoke louder than any warning. He slowly reached toward the phone, but stopped inches above the screen. Do not touch it, he said quietly. Not yet. Emma lowered her hand. Why? Lucien kept his eyes on the display. Because whatever awakened this line knows exactly where you are now. At that moment, his communication device activated again. His captain's voice was lower than before. Your Majesty, the unidentified group has withdrawn from the building. Lucien frowned. Withdrawn? Yes. They left without attempting to enter. It appears they accomplished whatever they came here to confirm. Lucien understood immediately. They had never intended to confront him. They had only needed proof that Emma Carter had activated the ancient connection. Somewhere beyond Portland, someone now knew the Royal Emergency Line had awakened again. He turned toward the rain-covered window. The city continued its ordinary routine. Cars moved through intersections. Neon signs reflected across wet sidewalks. People hurried beneath umbrellas, unaware that history had quietly shifted above their heads inside a modest sixth-floor apartment. Emma finally broke the silence. You said that line has not appeared in hundreds of years. What exactly is it? Lucien answered carefully, choosing each word with unusual precision. Long before modern governments existed, before telephones, before electricity, every royal house maintained one final way to ask for help. It could never be activated by accident. Emma looked down at her old phone in disbelief. This phone barely works half the time, which makes tonight even more impossible. She shook her head. I bought it secondhand almost 3 years ago. There is nothing special about it. Lucien studied her expression. She was telling the truth. Whatever mystery surrounded the device, Emma herself knew nothing about it. His attention shifted to the back of the phone. May I? She handed it to him without hesitation. Lucien carefully removed the faded protective case. Hidden beneath years of dust and scratches, a tiny silver emblem had been engraved into the metal near the battery compartment. It was no larger than a coin, almost invisible unless the light struck it from exactly the right angle. Emma leaned closer. I have never noticed that before. Lucien traced the outline with one finger, but never actually touched it. Very few people would. The emblem matched the same ancient symbols that had briefly appeared across the screen moments earlier. Before either of them could speak again, the phone emitted a soft chime unlike any notification Emma had ever heard. The display brightened. A map slowly appeared, showing the outline of North America. Then a single crimson point illuminated directly beneath their location in Portland. A second point appeared thousands of miles away beneath Manhattan. Thin silver light connected the two locations with a perfectly straight line. Emma whispered, What does that mean? Lucien's pale eyes remained fixed upon the impossible map. It means, he said quietly, that someone established this connection long before either of us was born, and tonight it has recognized us both. Emma remained frozen as the silver line connecting Portland and Manhattan continued glowing across the screen. It did not flicker like an ordinary application. It pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm that felt almost alive. She looked at Lucien, searching for the confidence he had shown since the moment he appeared outside her apartment. It was still there, but now it was accompanied by something she had not seen before. Respect. Not for the device. For whatever had awakened it. Lucien carefully handed the phone back to her. Emma, I need you to answer one question honestly. She nodded. Has anyone in your family ever spoken about unusual traditions, forgotten languages, or an heirloom that seemed unimportant? Emma thought for a long moment before slowly shaking her head. My parents passed away when I was young. My grandmother raised me until high school, but she never talked about anything like that. She always said our family was ordinary. Lucien lowered his eyes for a brief second. Sometimes the oldest secrets survive because people stop believing they matter. Before Emma could respond, his communication device activated once more. This time the voice on the other end carried unmistakable urgency. Your Majesty, the Royal Council has learned you left New York. They are demanding your immediate return. Lucien answered without hesitation. Tell them I will return when my responsibility here is complete. They are preparing an emergency session. Several council members believe the ancient network should never have been activated. It was not activated by me, Lucien replied calmly. That explanation may not satisfy them. It does not have to. He ended the transmission with a simple touch. Emma stared at him in disbelief. People are arguing because you came to help me? Lucien met her eyes. They believe I broke a law that has protected both our worlds for centuries. Did you? A faint smile appeared for the first time that evening. That depends on who is telling the story. Emma could not help smiling back despite everything that had happened. It lasted only a second before her phone chimed again. The map disappeared. In its place appeared a single sentence written in elegant silver letters. Guardian confirmation required. Emma frowned. What does that mean? Lucien did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the apartment door as if considering every possible future before speaking. It means the system recognizes you as someone under royal protection, but it has not yet identified the guardian responsible. Emma blinked. Guardian? Lucien nodded once. If no guardian is confirmed, the connection will close forever. Then confirm it. His expression grew unexpectedly serious. It is not that simple. Why not? Because the position cannot be assigned. He paused, his voice quieter than before. It must be accepted. The apartment fell silent again. Outside, the rain had begun to fade, revealing patches of clear night sky above the city. At that exact moment, Emma's phone illuminated one final time. Two names slowly appeared beneath the glowing words Guardian Confirmation. The first line displayed Emma Carter. The second remained blank for several seconds before letters emerged one by one until Lucien's own name stood beside hers. Neither of them had touched the screen. Neither had spoken a command. Yet the device had already made its choice. Emma stared at the two names glowing across the screen until the letters slowly dissolved into soft silver light. The apartment was silent except for the fading rain outside and the quiet ticking of the old kitchen clock. Neither she nor Lucien had accepted anything aloud, yet the ancient system had already recognized them together. Emma looked up, searching his pale gray eyes for an explanation. What happens now? She asked softly. Lucien held her gaze for a long moment before answering. Now the world will know you exist. The words should have frightened her, but his calm voice carried an unexpected reassurance. She had spent years believing she was invisible, just another waitress working long shifts, paying overdue bills, and hoping tomorrow might be a little kinder than yesterday. Tonight, everything had changed because of one message sent to the wrong number. Or perhaps, she realized, it had never been the wrong number at all. Lucien's communication device activated one final time. His captain spoke with quiet relief. Your Majesty, the Council has ended the emergency session. They have one message for you. Lucien listened without changing expression. What is their decision? They request that Miss Carter be brought to the royal estate under your personal protection. Until the mystery of the royal emergency line is understood, no one else may claim responsibility for her safety. Lucien thanked him and ended the call. Emma looked at him with disbelief. They want me to go to New York? Yes, he answered. Not as a prisoner. As my protected guest. Emma glanced around her small apartment. The worn couch, the tiny kitchen, the stack of library books she had borrowed but not yet finished, and the coffee mug she used every morning suddenly felt like pieces of a life she had outgrown without ever intending to leave behind. I do not belong in your world, she whispered. Lucien smiled gently. A few hours ago, you believed I did not belong in yours. Emma laughed quietly for the first time that evening. The sound surprised even her. Outside, the clouds slowly parted, revealing a clear moon above Portland. The storm that had seemed endless only hours before had finally passed. Lucien walked toward the apartment door before turning back. Whenever you are ready, we should leave before sunrise. Emma nodded, then paused. There is still one thing I do not understand. What is that? She lifted the old phone in her hand. Why did it choose you? Lucien looked at the cracked screen with an expression that seemed touched by memories far older than the city around them. I do not believe it chose me tonight, he said quietly. I believe it remembered me. Emma frowned. Remembered you from when? Lucien opened the apartment door, allowing the cool night air to drift inside. He looked back at her with the same calm certainty that had answered her desperate message only hours earlier. Because the Royal Emergency Line was created for one purpose alone, he said. Whenever someone with a truly kind heart called for help, the king was meant to answer. Emma lowered her eyes to the phone one last time. The original conversation was still there. At the top of the screen remained her frightened message. Beneath it was the reply that had changed everything. I am on my way. She smiled quietly, slipped the phone into her pocket, and stepped through the doorway beside Lucien, knowing that the future waiting beyond the storm was no longer defined by fear, but by hope. Even the coldest kings kneel for kindness.